They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. This is the Benchwarmerz podcast. I'm Lou, that's Jose, and wherever, however, and whenever you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. So we spent a lot of time in the first hour talking about some breaking news in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes making a gazillion dollars. How Chris Jones is probably the sixth man in America. Raheem Mostert demanded a trade. Deshaun Jackson's an idiot. And then a bunch of Lakers stuff and how they may or may not be heading into the finals this year. And the last thing we talked about was Russell Westbrook contracting COVID and kind of how that could be a little bit scary. But speaking of COVID, we have found out that the Ivy League, who seem to be on the forefront of everything, I guess presumably because they're smarter than the rest of us, they canceled fall sports. And fall sports will now be played in the spring. And we also saw that the Pac-12 and Big Ten are going to go in conference games only. First of all, this is scary because it feels more real. And if you look, the last time, the Ivy League were the first to cancel basketball back in the spring. And then everything all the dominoes fell after they started it. This feels scary. Thinking that football might not happen is terrifying because I don't know what anybody's going to do in the fall. And football is it's just part of our culture. The logistics of it, if first or second round draft pick in college football, because I'm presuming that some other college football leagues are going to do this and follow suit, much like they did with basketball. And the NFL draft is in the spring. I mean, do you even risk playing out that last year of your collegiate career and risking your future earnings? I don't think so.
It kind of depends on where I am. If I'm a second round pick and I think that's my ceiling, then yeah, I'm probably not playing. But maybe you don't play the whole season. Maybe you go you win 6 games or play 6 games. I think players still want to win the Heisman Trophy. Players still want to win national championships. It'd be one thing if you go down to a bowl game. I don't think it would look good for you, and I don't think it would look good for your draft prospects if coming into the season you say, you know what, I'm just going to declare for the NFL draft. I'm not even playing. First of all, I think you risk other players leapfrogging you because other players are performing on the field and you're not. So your stock kind of stays where it is. Even if you take Trevor Lawrence, for example, right now, probably the consensus number 1 pick overall next year. Is there nothing that anyone can do to play better than him, to play well? I mean, not even better than him. He wouldn't be playing. If someone, if Justin Fields puts up an otherworldly season next year, could he not leapfrog Trevor Lawrence to be the number 1 overall pick if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play at all? I think you would risk too much by not playing, unless you just are okay with, hey, I'll be in the NFL and I'll figure it out then.
Yeah, I mean, we did see sort of a microcosm of that with Christian McCaffrey, and I think one of the Bosa brothers skipped their bowl games because they knew, they're going to be first-round picks. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's going to be. I mean, it's just unless the NFL, is smart and reacts to it and moves their draft back, which I think would be.
They would have to.
I mean, that just would be a great idea.
You also need to give GMs and owners and scouts time to evaluate all the players. Combine. I would say if college football decided to move their season all to the spring, you would have to have the NFL draft in June or July, something like that. And then rookies would get cut a little bit, be behind the 8 ball a little bit as far as preparation, but they catch up.
As far as the NCAA making Pac-12 and Big Ten doing in-conference games only, I mean, the Pac-12, it makes perfect sense. I mean, they're the most geographically isolated conference in football. And the Big Ten, honestly, I feel like it's a good thing for Rutgers because Rutgers has been the butt of the Big Ten jokes forever. And truthfully, I think they need a get-right season. So if they were to play I don't know, Fairleigh Dickinson or Seton Hall or maybe NJIT or Montclair State, I think that they would feel a little better about themselves, honestly. And I think that maybe it's a good idea.
Well, I would imagine if you're in the Big Ten, I mean, because Rutgers, they're probably still going to get stuck playing with all these teams. And like with Penn State and Michigan State, I think that's what they agree what they're planning on doing. Not necessarily going. That's the thing. That's why it doesn't make any sense to me. So I could see if in one state, right? But you have Wisconsin, you have Pennsylvania, you have Ohio, you have Michigan, you have Minnesota, you have Indiana, you have Iowa, you have Nebraska, you have New Jersey, and you have Maryland. What are you exactly protecting yourself from by playing only 13 teams? Like, I don't know how many teams that is, but those are a lot of different states.
Yeah.
I could see if it was across a 2 or 3 state, perimeter or something like that, but it's across multiple states, so I don't really know what they're trying to accomplish by keeping it in conference. It doesn't make any sense to me. And yes, Rutgers has been punching over its weight class for quite some time and needs to go back to the Big East where they can actually have a chance to do some winning.
Agreed. Or D2 might be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it just makes me wonder what's going to happen for the NFL. But I did have a theory, and I want to know your opinion on this, Jose. So as far as the NFL season goes in the fall, I think I have an idea that could could not only solve the problem of COVID, but might also be a way that the NFL just gets what it's always wanted, and that's to just basically own more time. Because they own a day of the week, they own 4, 5, 6 months of the year. But what if in the fall the NFL decides that teams play games every other week? So you have 16 teams playing week 1, and then 16 teams playing week 2, and then the first 16 playing week 3, and then you're doubling the length of the season. So instead of it's going to be 18 weeks this year with 17 games and a bye week, you're doubling that, and you're almost, what are you at, 34, 35, 36 weeks? You're at 36 weeks. I mean, that's most of the year. So you're talking, a 6-month season, 7-month season? I think that it could, it might be interesting in how they have to deal with it the season after, but who cares? I mean, just you have to get this season. And if they have 14 days in between games, then even someone who has COVID, there's enough leeway and enough time where you can kind of isolate, theoretically get better, provided, there's no pre-existing conditions or things like that or complications. And then we have more football for a longer period of time, and we have more complete teams because these people are healthier because they've had time to isolate.
It's actually not a bad idea, especially when you consider that if college football were to move to the spring, that would actually give them, that would actually extend the entire timeline.
Yeah.
I think it's actually, I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of, some logistical fact, or something like that.
Stadiums and season ticket holders, and what does that mean? But yeah, I didn't even think about that. You could do week 1 could be, if it's 16 teams week 1, you could do 8 games on Saturday, 8 games on Sunday. Yeah, no,
it's actually, it really makes a lot of sense because then you do give that space. Oh, we found someone's coronavirus. Oh, he doesn't play for another 2 weeks anyway. He's only going to miss 1 game or something along those lines. Yeah, no, I think it's certainly an idea worth exploring. I'm sure there's some nuance that we're not seeing or understanding, but I think it's certainly an idea worth exploring. And I would never turn down more football under any circumstance. So
yeah, and that's the thing. After being starved for basically any major sport for the last 5 months, I don't care if it's the Lions playing the Browns. I would watch any football game you put, any professional NFL, not even. I would watch college. I would watch XFL. Any football game you put in front of me that was live, I could not care less. So they could just dominate. The ratings and the advertising money would just be even more stupid than it already is. But maybe I'm just ahead of my time. We'll see if they catch on. But
the only thing I will just add, it may, just as far as next season, which we should just worry about that when we get there. Yeah. I don't know how much recovery time an NFL player needs. You get beat up a lot.
Essentially have a bye week every week.
Yeah.
You're not sustaining that, because that's the one thing with the Thursday night games that players complained about the most was that, you get done playing on Sunday, you're barely even recovered from the last game to play Thursday. So
yeah,
I can only imagine that having more time between games is going to help players' longevity. If something is sore or, you tweak your hamstring. Everybody gets 14 days to kind of recover. And I feel like, barring any major injuries, obviously, those little dings and nicks that you take, you're going to have double the time you usually have. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like the way Thursday games and Sunday games and Monday games are mixed around. You might even be able, maybe not every 2 weeks, but you might be able to work some sort of schedule magic where this group of teams, we have 5 games on Thursday. They won't play again for another 10 days. And you could work around. You could figure something out. I think you're onto something. I don't know if that's the exact idea, but that's the direction they need to be going in.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad I'm not crazy. Maybe I'm smarter than I think. We'll see. But speaking of football, coming up next, we are going to dive into ESPN's top 10 list of quarterbacks. And I don't think that they got it right, but maybe that was the point. And then following that, we're going to be talking a little about the wide receiver list that we came up with. And actually, we can just go right into the top 10 quarterbacks. As a matter of fact, let's just do that right now. I don't even have to segue. We don't need a break. We'll blow through that break. We'll do another one. You're listening to the Benchwarmerz podcast on either iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you might be. You can follow us along. Email us at benchwarmerzpodcast@yahoo.com, Benchwarmers with Aziz. So now that that's out of the way, because I am just not good at self-promotion, ESPN came out with a list of the top 10 quarterbacks in there, and this was a list of executives. I think it was 50 executives 50 league executives, coaches and scouts and players, and they tallied them up and picked the top 10 receivers, or top 10 quarterbacks, excuse me. No surprise, Patrick Mahomes, number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, again, not a surprise, Russell Wilson. Number 3 was Aaron Rodgers. And I want to just stop there for a second. Number 4 was Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
I can give you the whole list if you want. This way we can come back.
Yeah, just go ahead. Just read the whole list off. Yeah.
So I don't want to keep people in suspense. So 4 was Deshaun Watson, 5 was Drew Brees, 6 was Lamar Jackson, 7 was Tom Brady, 8 was Carson Wentz, 9 was Dak Prescott, and 10 was Matthew Stafford. And Aaron Rodgers at number 3 seems a little high. I feel like it was almost like a legacy pick where maybe if you were ranking the ceilings of each of these quarterbacks, I might have Aaron Rodgers at number 3. But the Packers they've established themselves as a run-first team, and I think they doubled down on that with the most recent draft where they picked 0 wide receivers and 2 H-backs. So I'm not sure what the thinking is with Aaron Rodgers at 3. I don't see it.
Well, I think, first of all, I agree with you, but I think it is a respect pick, and that's why I don't understand why Drew Brees and Tom Brady are as low as they are. If you're going to give Aaron Rodgers, hey, and I'm okay with that, right? If you're going to say, hey, I respect this guy as a great quarterback, I think he has another amazing season in him left. He's going to put him at number 3. Then you have to put Brees and Brady right there. It's got to be Rodgers, Brees, Brady, or whatever order you want to put them in. They need to be all back to back.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't understand. If you're going to go, the thinking is not consistent because Aaron Rodgers last year was not markedly better than Drew Brees or Tom Brady. Neither of the 3 were amazing players, but they were still not. It wasn't like Aaron Rodgers was 2 steps ahead of them. They were basically very comparable numbers. Perhaps you could look at the fact that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers got to the NFC Championship game. Maybe that gives them an edge. I don't know. And as far as Deshaun Watson being number 4, I don't know. It's the same type of thinking. I feel like if I were making this list, it's hard for me to put Deshaun Watson. And I think that's the issue with the quarterback list right now. I think once you get past Mahomes and Russell Wilson at 1 and 2, it's really it's just hard to nail it down. It's very subjective because you have your old guard. You have your guys who've been there and done that, and Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and I'm kind of surprised that Matt Ryan was left off the top 10 completely, but we'll get into that later. Then you have your young and up-and-comers. You have your Lamar Jackson. You have your Deshaun Watson. You have your Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz. I feel like I might have put I think I would have put Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees ahead of them because, as much as I like Dak Prescott, I feel like as I've been looking at it, more and more, he needs to do it one more year. I need to see him put up MVP level numbers one more year. So he needs to be near 5,000, over 30 touchdowns, under 10 interceptions, around 65% completion percentage next season. And then I think he's on the verge of being a top 5 player, but he's not there right now. A top 5 quarterback, he's not there right now. And I think you kind of have to give these other guys the legacy. But I don't see Deshaun Watson being clearly ahead of Dak. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have Deshaun Watson at 4 and Dak Prescott at 9. I don't think the gap is that big. And so that's why I'm like, I can't really make sense of it at all. I don't know what their thinking was or how they came up with that list.
So the biggest problem I have, and just kind of looking at this list even more now, number 3 how is number 3 not Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson, if you want to look at it in terms of ceiling, I mean, Lamar Jackson was first team All-Pro quarterback last year. He threw for 3,100 yards. He rushed for 1,200 yards. And their team only got better in the offseason. So if you want to talk about, quarterback in, maybe I don't think you can judge them in a vacuum, but you have to look at their situation in some respect. And Lamar Jackson's going to be probably, barring injury, as good as he was last year. I mean, he's only 23 years old. So if you're judging on ceiling, Lamar Jackson's ceiling it might not even have been reached yet, despite his stellar season he had last year. Deshaun Watson has not proven really anything to me. I don't think that he deserves to be number 4.
Certainly not. He's been a good player. He's had good numbers.
Good.
I'm looking at
his
good. He's good. And yes, Lamar Jackson is just coming off an MVP season. I think that Lamar Jackson was put lower because he's only done it for 1 year. Based on the way it seems like this list has been constructed. Now, in fairness, Deshaun Watson's only done it for 2 years, so right. I don't know it's not very consistent. But it's not a cumulative career list. Yeah, as far as I can tell. As far as the confidence level that you have that he's going to repeat it again, like the confidence level that you have that he's going to come in and do exactly what he did last season or do better. Yeah. Now, I agree with you. I would have put Lamar Jackson. I think if I were making this list and I had to bet some money on it, I think that I would have just gone with the old guard, going 3, 4, 5, and then put Lamar Jackson at 6. Probably Lamar Jackson at 6, Deshaun Watson, or maybe even Carson Wentz, I don't know, at 7. It would have been tough, but I think Lamar Jackson deserves to be basically right after that first grouping. Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think that you're right with Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers kind of all grouped together. I think there's no real – I mean, Tom Brady we didn't see a lot from last year, but, I mean, he was we didn't really see Aaron Rodgers either. I mean, Drew Brees posted, I think, his highest a career-high passer rating. It was 116.3. And he's basically like a 70% passing completion machine. Yeah. So how you don't put them – if you're judging on system alone, I mean, Tom Brady is a wild card with the Bucs. We've never seen him not in a Patriots uniform. I mean, Drew Brees, take away 2 fluke plays. I mean, he's in the NFC Championship back-to-back years. So, speaking of old guard, though, what are your thoughts on Big Ben not even being given an honorable mention no, he was an honorable mention, but he wasn't listed on the list. So yeah, I think Matt Ryan and Big Ben are 2 names that kind of struck me. Like, how did Matt Stafford make this list? Yeah, and that's the one guy. I mean, talk about legacy. I mean, Matt Stafford he's got numbers, but he's never. Has Matt Stafford even made a playoff game? Never mind. I know he's not won one. I don't even know if he's ever been to the postseason once or twice, but yeah, he hasn't. And Matt Ryan absolutely deserves to be ranked ahead of Matthew Stafford because Matt Ryan has the numbers as well. Yeah. He has elite numbers. Maybe Big Ben, but so is I was gonna say he's coming off an injury, but so is Matthew Stafford. He was injured for 8 games last year, so yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I wonder if if you're judging on just ceiling potential, I could understand maybe Ben not being in there because Ben's ceiling doesn't seem like it's very high. Yeah. And Ryan still seems like he has some gas left in the tank. Absolutely. But Kyler Murray, where's Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray was the offensive player of the year. I mean, he's Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year, excuse me.
Yeah.
And his skill set is phenomenal, and his ceiling. I mean, we have no idea what he could be better than Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's got talent on talent. So how does he not even make?
I don't think he deserves the top 10 spot. He's
You'd rather have Matt Stafford than Kyler Murray right now, going into next season.
Well, I would rather have Matt Ryan than Kyler Murray, and I think Matt Ryan deserved that spot over Matthew Stafford and over Kyler.
But not Matt Stafford.
Not Matt Stafford. I would rather have Kyler Murray over Matthew Stafford, absolutely.
And Dak. Dak. The last thing. Dak. I'm a notorious for being kind of a Cowboy fan, but also a giant Cowboy hater, specifically with Dak, because Dak doesn't pass the eye test with me, and I know he's got some good numbers, but it's. Even the team has Carson Wentz, or not the team, but the ranking people, the team made, players, executives have Carson Wentz ranked higher. And I think Carson Wentz, pound for pound, is more talented than Dak Prescott. It's just the longevity
which counts.
Which does count, I guess, to a degree. But Dak, I don't know if Dak is a top 10 quarterback. He top 12, yes. Top 10, I think if you give me a team, I'd rather have Matt Ryan. Or, we've talked about this. We have a bet going for the season. I'd rather have Kyler Murray than Dak Prescott.
Yeah, so as far as Dak Prescott, listen, I'm a big Dak Prescott believer. Since 2016, only one quarterback has more wins than Dak Prescott. His name is Tom Brady. Yeah. So, Dak Prescott's gone out there. He's gotten it done. He's won games. He's won a postseason game. He's put up big numbers. Dak Prescott, to me, is a player who, if he puts up a big season this year, you're going to see him firmly entrenched in that top 5 area. I think he's on the verge of being a top 5 quarterback. Now, Kyler Murray, I do think, has a higher ceiling than Dak Prescott. I don't think he's ready to hit that ceiling this next season. And I think he also has a lower floor than Dak Prescott as well. So, I just think that Kyler Murray needs to do it for another year or two to earn a spot in that top 10. The one thing I noted about the top 10 list, 3 of those players are not going to be, maybe even 4, depending on Matthew Stafford's future, are not going to be in the league in 3 years from now.
Right.
So that's kind of my argument for signing a guy like Dak Prescott, that once you remove the 3 Hall of Famers that are on the top 10 list and the one really good quarterback that's on the top 10 list, Dak Prescott's like basically 6th or 5th on the list right now.
Yeah.
So, I think that basically you're signing him. He's going to be entrenched in that top 10 discussion for quite some time. I don't see him rising to the level of a Mahomes or a Russell Wilson. I have questions about Lamar Jackson's longevity. I don't want to doubt the guy because I doubted him coming out of college and I look like an idiot. So, I'm just going to let him keep doing what he does. But I think Dak Prescott has the ability to be a top 5 quarterback. And I think his spot on the list at 9 is basically a good spot for him right now. I think I agree with you. He's not like a lock top 10. I think he's in that 9 to 12 range, and he has a chance to go into the top 5 if he has a good season this year.
Once Breeze, Brady, and Rodgers are gone, you would think that Dak would move up. But don't forget that Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow just came to the league. Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are going to be in the league next year. Even Sam Darnold might, if he doesn't contract mono again, might start perking up a little bit. So it's not a lock that once those 3 are gone that Dak's going to move up. Dak might actually get knocked off this list if some of those newer guys start really showing up.
I think Sam Darnold is playing for his life, his football life this season.
I agree.
Dak Prescott is at least, he should get another contract. I'm not sure Sam Darnold's going to be in the NFL in 2 years. So,
yeah, I think it's this season is Adam Gase's career, and I think next season is going to be Sam Darnold's career.
Yeah, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Baker Mayfield are basically playing for their NFL lives this year and next.
Yeah, and Jared Goff, I think, is going to be. I don't think Jared Goff is going to be he's not going to be a starting quarterback, I think, in 2 years for sure. I don't know if he's going to be in the league in 3, but I guess we'll see. So, all right, coming up next, speaking of lists, we came up with our own list on the Benchwarmers, and Jose and myself, we went over this. We have a consensus top 10 wide receiver list going into next season, and we want to share that with you so you can follow us along on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on the iHeartRadio podcasting app and a whole host of other places. So stick around, and we're going to come right back on the Benchwarmers podcast.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
And now back to the Benchwarmers podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou, that's Jose, and this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day. We just got done talking about the ESPN list, the top 10 quarterbacks list that they came up with this week. And so with that in mind, we decided to come up with our own list of top 10 wide receivers. And so we want to put this out there instead of just reacting to something ESPN did. We decided to create our own list. And so, Jose, I want to go from 10 to 1 and kind of just build the suspense a little bit with the top 10 wide receivers going into the 2020 season. We started off number 10. We can just kind of go back and forth if you want.
Yep.
Number 10 is Stefon Diggs. And obviously new to the Buffalo Bills. Stefon Diggs has had some interesting career highlights. He had a very memorable play, the Minnesota Miracle against the Saints. And Stefon Diggs I feel like this was tough. The 10th guy was tough. Stefon Diggs, I don't know if he got in necessarily because of everything he did last year, but he seems like he's got the potential, especially going into the season on Buffalo. I mean, he seems like just the right guy that Josh Allen needs to kind of just wing it to down the field. And last year, just for reference, I mean, he had 1,130 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is solid, solid for sure on a team that, had two good wide receivers. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what your thoughts are on putting him 10th.
Yeah, I mean, Stefon Diggs was, look, when you're at the 10th spot, there's a lot of guys who are vying for that last spot in this top 10 list. I think Stefon Diggs has the ceiling to be a top 5 wide receiver, and I think that's part of the reason why he's number 10. Mm-hmm. That maybe he has a lower floor than some of the guys who are lower, who might be below him. But if he and Josh Allen click, I mean, you're talking about a guy. Last year he had 63 receptions and 1,130 yards. That's almost 18 yards per catch. If he can get more targets, he was kind of splitting targets with Adam Thielen throughout his career at Minnesota. If he can actually just be the focal point of that passing attack, I think he has a chance to put up some big numbers. Now, I don't know how often Josh Allen's going to throw the ball, but yeah, I think Stefon Diggs is a perfect spot here. Number 10, guy who has a good upside, but there are some questions. Mm-hmm.
So at number 9, we decided to go with Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper is similar season last year to Stefon Diggs, 1,189 yards, 8 touchdowns. Amari Cooper I feel like Amari's good. He did make the Pro Bowl last year, so I have to give him that. But I feel like he's good, not great. And the problem I had with Amari with not putting him higher is that it felt like he disappeared in some of the bigger games that the Cowboys had last year. Like he showed up, Dak became instantly a better quarterback, more confident quarterback, a better throwing quarterback. And it does help that it's said that Amari Cooper is the best route runner in football. But on some of the bigger stages that they were on, it felt like Amari Cooper kind of shrank in the spotlight, which when you're in Big D, you can't shrink when the lights are on, because the lights are always on and they're brightest in Dallas.
Well, I know it's a different game, but anyone who's ever owned Amari Cooper in fantasy football knows that he disappears for like 5 to 6 games out of the year. It's just been something with him. I don't know what it is. A lot of time I've been reading, people say he's been injured and is a tough guy and plays through injuries a lot. I don't know what it is. I've often thought that top corners are able to take him out of the game. Mm. That's kind of what I've looked at. Like if you're an above average cornerback, Amari Cooper's not beating you. You can shut him down. And but we also see when he gets it going, there aren't too many receivers who are better than him in the game. When he's at his best, Agreed. When he gets it going, he's explosive. He's amazing. We saw what he did last year on the 2 years ago on Thanksgiving. We got the 4 touchdowns or whatever it was. It's his ceiling is so high. It's just ridiculous. If he just could be a little bit more consistent, and that's what we're going to see as we get up on the list, as we go move up this list. These other guys are more consistent, and that's Amari Cooper's biggest issue. He doesn't have the level of consistency that you would like out of a number one receiver, but as far as sheer talent, he's one of the best in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think his ceiling is very high, but his floor is also very low, and that's the problem. You kind of have to shrink, raise up that floor a little bit, and he'll be considered a much better wide receiver. Number 8, we decided to go with Keenan Allen of the Chargers, and despite his he almost was labeled a bust because he had 2 back-to-back injuries where he was just gone from the league for, I think it was almost like 2 consecutive seasons. Mm-hmm. He has made a stellar comeback, and I think he actually won Comeback Player of the Year, as a matter of fact. He made the Pro Bowl last year, and he had 100 catch season, 104 catches, just 1 yard shy of 1,200 yards, which is maddening. That would drive me out of my mind. 6 touchdowns. And, Keenan Allen is, all things considered, is a great number 1 wide receiver. And I don't know, personally, I think having Phillip Rivers as his quarterback last year, I almost think that was a detriment in some cases.
Well, Phillip Rivers just loves throwing the ball to him. If you ever watch the game, he would get
loves throwing the ball to defense too.
Yeah, he would just get so many targets. I'd be watching him, like I see Mike Williams streaking down the field wide open, and he's just forcing the ball to Keenan Allen. Now Keenan Allen, just a little peek behind the curtain. Lou and I made our own list separately, and then kind of combined our lists to kind of see where everyone was. And Keenan Allen was the guy I had initially left off my list. And it's because he's kind of a boring player. He doesn't have those spectacular catches.
He doesn't have that catch.
Yeah, he does. He just, 6 touchdowns, 3 years in a row. It's like, okay, whatever, 6 touchdowns. It's just he's putting up solid numbers, but not MVP level or offensive player of the year level numbers. And he's exactly what we're missing from Amari Cooper. Consistent.
Right.
2017, 1,393 yards. 2018, 1,196. 2019, 1,199. He shows up. He rarely has an off game. He does the dirty things. He's the possession receiver, and maybe that's part of it. He's not like a big, deep field stretcher, and that's usually who we like for our top receivers. But Keenan Allen is as good as it comes as a number 1 receiver, or among the best number 1 receivers in the game. And Justin Herbert is going to enjoy having him as a safety blanket out of the slot.
Or Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe even Colin Kaepernick. We'll see.
Oh, yeah.
But moving on. So moving on with our list, this is our top 10 list of wide receivers going into the 2020 season. So with Stephon Diggs at 10, Amari Cooper at 9, Keenan Allen was 8. At number 7, we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers' Chris Godwin, who this was interesting because Godwin, he's only 23 years old, but he had a fantastic year last year. 1,333 yards. He had 9 touchdowns, and that's with Mike Evans on the other side of him getting as many catches. Godwin looks like his ceiling is just, I don't even know where he could go. I think the problem is that we've only seen it really for 1 season, so that kind of kept him from being much higher than 7 at this point.
Yeah, I think we could have easily put him in the top 5 based on just thinking about where his talent level is.
Yeah.
If Tom Brady is even 80 to 90% of who we think he is, Chris Godwin is going to have an insane season this year. You look, he's out of the slot. He's better than Julian Edelman, I think, at this point in their career.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Julian Edelman routinely puts up great seasons with Tom Brady. You might be looking at a 1,500, 1,600 yard season out of Chris Godwin, depending on how it goes in Tampa Bay this year. I don't have a lot to add. He's amazing. He's great. And one thing he had Jameis Winston throwing him the ball last year, who seems to like to throw the ball to the defense as much as he likes to throw the ball to the offense. Yep. Now, in fairness, Jameis Winston did throw 5,000 yards, so that does help Godwin get a lot of yardage there. But there's nothing to not like about Chris Godwin. I could see him being threatening for top 5 in the list next season.
I agree. Yeah. So number 6 on our list of top 10 wide receivers going into the 2020 season, we have Davante Adams. And Davante Adams, this was hard because Davante Adams feels like he's a great wide receiver, but it doesn't necessarily feel like I don't know if I think he's a number 1, but you look at his stats from last year. He missed 4 games with an injury, so he only ended up with he played 12 games played. He did have 83 catches in those 12 games, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just under 1,000 yards, 997 yards, which again I would be losing my mind. My OCD would be, come on, like 3 more. I'd be lobbying the NFL. I'd be petitioning them. And he did have 5 touchdowns. He did make the Pro Bowl, so I mean but I feel like Davante Adams in a way with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he was the only option. I mean, who else? Geronimo Allison wasn't doing anything. Lazard wasn't doing anything. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is. His name takes longer to say than he'll be in the league.
Geronimo Allison did nothing either.
Yeah, so it's hard to. It feels like you almost give Davante Adams the nod sort of by default, but I mean
he's got
number 6.
I'm sorry. He's got 1,000-yard season to his career. So we're really putting him here on the strength of he had 3 consecutive double-digit touchdown seasons heading into last year, and then he got hurt. So when you're the number 1 receiver for Aaron Rodgers, you have an opportunity to do big things. And so it kind of feels like you kind of have to just put him here because it just seems like, well, he's probably going to put up 1,000 yards and have 12 touchdowns. You just feel like you can just write it down for him. But he is kind of an unexciting option, and he's a guy who I think we could have easily put Chris Godwin over if we really wanted to.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm Lou, that's Jose. This is the Benchwarmerz podcast. You can follow us along on basically all social media. We're breaking down our top 10 wide receivers going into the 2020 season. This is off the heels of ESPN's quarterback list, so we decided to preemptively come out with our own receiver list and see where I'm sure that's coming down the pike from ESPN. So 10, we had just going kind of leading up here. Number 10 was Stephon Diggs. Number 9 was Amari Cooper. Number 8 was Keenan Allen. 7 was Chris Godwin. 6 was Davante Adams. Number 5 is Chris Godwin's teammate, Mike Evans. Now, Mike Evans, I have a confession to make. And I was thinking Mike Evans was Vincent Jackson for some reason. And
I wasn't going to say anything.
No, I'll full disclosure. I was dumb for the first few minutes about this because I thought that Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, I got confused and I thought they were the same person because I didn't realize Mike Evans was 26 years old. I was like, no, Mike Evans is way old. He's like almost out of the league now. And that's Vincent Jackson. And so Mike Evans made the Pro Bowl last year. He's only 26 years old. He didn't have a great year last year. He had, 67 catches for 1,157 yards and 8 touchdowns. So you might say, well, why is he higher than Chris Godwin? But I think I mean, we've seen it more times with Mike Evans than we've seen with Godwin.
Yeah, he's got 6 consecutive years with 1,000 or more yards receiving.
That's pretty good.
It's hard to ignore that. He's never been a high reception guy. You look at his career, 17.3 yards per reception, 17.7. He's a big play guy, which is part of the reason why I think Chris Godwin may end up having a better year than him this season because I don't think Tom Brady's going to go down the field that often. Although I have read reports that Tom Brady can throw the ball down the field just fine, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, it's hard to ignore the consistency. He's just been a consistent top 10 receiver basically since he's come into the NFL, and you would imagine he's going to keep doing that next year.
Yeah, and so that leaves. So you can start to put together who might be on the top of this list.
Yeah.
Number 4, and it kind of this was the end of sort of a tier, and I think Tyreek Hill is at number 4, and at the top of that sort of second tier of wide receivers. Now Tyreek Hill is interesting because in a way he's almost the opposite of Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
And he, where he's not, he only had 860 yards last year, and he played 12 games, so you give him a pass on some of those. He had 7 touchdowns, but it felt like, and he still made the Pro Bowl after playing only 12 games, by the way. It seems like every time Tyreek Hill touches the ball, it's just an electrifying big play where you're like, wow. I mean, there was in a game last year, I think there was a interception. And I forget somebody was running the ball, and Tyreek Hill just shows up and catches catches. I mean, he stuck in my memory, not even with the ball in his hand. So in a way, he just feels like he might be the most dangerous, if not the most talented wide receiver in the league. He's definitely the most dangerous weapon in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's here, because based on the numbers alone, you wouldn't necessarily put him at number 4. But I think when we look at the 2018 season, you kind of see what his ceiling kind of looks like. 137 targets, 87 receptions, 1,479 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Basically a touchdown waiting to happen, a big play at any point in time he touches the ball. If he can put it together for a full season and get the type of targets that Julio Jones and Michael Thomas and all these other guys, these other number 1 receivers get, where they're in the 150, 160 targets, he's going to have a monster year. So, yeah.
I agree. So now we get to the top 3 of our wide receiver list. And in truth, I think that if you put, and we talked about this a little bit, putting this list together, the top 3 players, I feel like in any order, if I saw a list where it was any version of the top 3 being the top 3, I can't argue it. I can argue it, but I wouldn't argue against it. So, at number 3, we decided that DeAndre Hopkins was at number 3. Now, DeAndre Hopkins was first team All-Pro last year and a Pro Bowl. He had 104 catches. He had 1,165 yards, 7 touchdowns. And again, DeAndre Hopkins has had some mind-bending catches in his career. And I think he had a catch that I think was actually better than like Odell's famous catch against the Cowboys one. I don't remember who they were playing, but it was so spectacular. And it feels like every time he is in play that there's a big play about to happen. And so he's got, I mean, his ceiling is otherworldly. I mean, he's 27 years old, so he's in his prime of his career. But I feel like he might actually be better this year on the Cardinals.
Yeah, if we were making this list next year and you told me that DeAndre Hopkins is number 1 on the list, I would not be surprised at all. He's an amazing player. He's consistent. He can beat you deep. He can beat you in the short game. He can go medium. He blocks. He does everything that you want a franchise number 1 wide receiver to do. He's amazing after the catch. He's hard to tackle. Yep. He's shifty. He's fast. He's athletic. There's nothing wrong with his game. I think that for me, I had him at 3 just being edged out by the top 2 guys, mainly because he's switching teams this year. So you imagine there's got to be some learning curve. And I feel like we'll get into the top 2 players, but I just feel like the other 2 players, one of them being, we'll just say the names, one of them being Julio Jones. He's a bit more consistent. Yep. Just from year to year. It just seems like every year, another 1,400 yards for Julio Jones, ho-hum. Yep. And then Michael Thomas just had an otherworldly year last season where it kind of feels like he's about to enter into a stretch where he just starts dominating. And, but that's all speculation. I wouldn't be surprised at all if DeAndre Hopkins has a better year than both. So. Yeah,
I mean, Julio Jones, we had at number 2, and Julio Jones, again, made the Pro Bowl. He had 99 receptions and 99 receptions and 1,394 yards. So, yeah, you're right. Another 1,400-yard season. He only had 6 touchdowns. Remember, he had that long touchdown drought, which I think kind of hurt him a little bit. But, the thing with DeAndre, too, is that Julio Jones. I can't get my own list straight. Julio Jones is 30 years old. So, the odds of him getting much better than we've already seen for a wide receiver. I mean, he is big and strong, but speed doesn't, you don't get faster after age 30. So, we'll see if he starts to slow down, which leaves, again, like you said, Michael Thomas at number 1, first team All-Pro, Pro Bowl. I mean, broke Marvin Harrison's reception record in a season with 149, 1,725 yards receiving, which is just silly. 9 touchdowns. And, this season, going into the 2020 season, now that he has a legitimate number 2 receiver and Emmanuel Sanders, I mean, he could be even better.
Yeah, it feels like he's about to really just start blowing up. The one thing I feel bad for him is that Drew Brees is probably going to retire at the end of this year, and I don't know that Jameis Winston is going to be that seamless replacement. But we'll see. So, maybe his long-term outlook is a little capped, but going into this coming season, the numbers he put up this year, and that the thing that really stood out to me was that last year You knew that the ball was going to Michael. He got it targeted 185 times last season. That's more than 10 times a game. That's like 11. They're basically throwing the ball to him 11, 12 times a game.
Yep.
You know the ball's coming to him. They're double teaming them, they're bumping him. They're doing everything.
And
possible.
there's nobody else that is really stepping up to catch passes.
And he just catches everything. It was just. I remember watching some of the games. Like, how on earth did he catch that pass?
Yeah.
And so that's really, to me, he just kind of had. And I kind of feel the same way about Julio Jones a little bit. It just seems like these guys are just unstoppable. Like, there's just no defense. Kind of what I said about Amari Cooper, how a top corner can shut this guy down. A top corner can do nothing against Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
You're just doing nothing because he's got such good body control where he kind of posts you up. Even if you're guarding him, he makes it so his body is facing the ball and you're behind him. It's just nothing. And then he can beat you deep. He can beat you close. There's nothing you can do against him. The one thing you would hope is that could really take him to the next level, which, I mean, it would be scary if he does do this, is to see his yards per reception go up, because it seems like he's more of a short to medium yardage guy. So if he starts getting down the field more often, I mean, we might be looking at a 2,000-yard season for him. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like no cornerback can stop him, and in some cases, no two cornerbacks can stop him. He was doubled almost every game last year at some point.
How could you not double him?
Right, exactly, and it still didn't matter. He still had 1,700 yards, which is just stupid. So just to run down one more time. So from 1 to 10, we had Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. And you might be wondering, where's Odell Beckham in this list? And while Odell Beckham might have a good season in the 2020 season, I feel like it's kind of a prove it year, and he has not proved it recently. I mean, he only had 1,000 yards last year, which for Odell Beckham,
that's okay.
Is okay. I mean, I feel like the expectations on him are so much higher than that, and
he hasn't had an elite season since 2016, right? Yeah. So we're heading into the 2020 season. He hasn't been an elite level wide receiver since 2016, where he had 1,300 yards. That's really the level you need to be if you're going to be an elite receiver. Over 100 catches, over 1,300 yards, either or both. And he didn't do either of those last season. So. Yeah, we're running where Odell Beckham Jr. is too. So, like, if you ever find him, let us know so that we can, come back to us, Odell. We'd like to see this guy that we thought you were. Some other guys left off the list. I think Juju Smith-Schuster. Yep. It's a guy that people might question. Both you and I feel like he's more of a number 2 receiver, not.
He's not a number 1.
Yeah, Allen Robinson. He's a good receiver, not top 10. He's probably in that 10 to 15 range, possibly.
Yeah.
AJ Green is the type of guy who. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up a top 10 year, but it's hard to predict it going in, being he hasn't really played.
Healthy AJ Green is a top 5 receiver in the league.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is he hasn't been healthy in 3 years, 4 years, something like that.
Yeah,
and the odds of him getting healthier are just getting less and less as time goes by. So yeah,
he is entering a contract year, I guess, somewhat, but still, or he's franchised this year, so he's, he has a chance to make some more, maybe get one more contract. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's hard to put him up. He hasn't been over, kind of like Odell Beckham Jr. He hasn't really had a monster season since 2015. So,
and the thing with Odell is, I feel like his on the team that he's on, the Browns, I mean, offensively are stacked from top to bottom, and the problem is that he went to the Browns to play with Jarvis Landry, but Jarvis Landry might be the biggest detriment to Odell Beckham's career. In that, Landry is a reception guy. I mean, you can pencil him in for 80 catches a year, pretty much every year of his career. Odell Beckham, while he isn't, a high catch number guy, I feel like Odell is, he needs to get involved early in the game. So you have two guys who need catches early, because I feel like Odell is the type who might mentally check out of a game if he feels like he's not being utilized enough and just say, all right, well, you're not going to throw me the ball. I'm just going to mail in the rest of this game and kind of just slack off and not really give it 100%. And Jarvis Landry is a guy who he needs volume. He needs catches. He doesn't need deep. He's not a deep ball catcher, but he's like, if you need 8 yards, Jarvis Landry is going to get you 8 yards. You need 50 yards, Jarvis Landry is going to get you 8 yards. It's just.
And to your point about Odell Beckham Jr., his the 3 years his first 3 years with the Giants, which kind of created the legend of Odell Beckham Jr.
Yep.
He had 130 targets, 158 targets, and 169 targets.
Mm.
Last season with the Cleveland Browns, he had 133 targets.
Yep.
So he's not getting the volume of targets,
right.
And so he's not going to get the volume of catches. And so it's just it doesn't. And I don't see it improving this year because they are going to run the ball. They're going to try and minimize Baker Mayfield making mistakes like he was last season. So, and then they just signed Austin Hooper too. So I don't see how more targets are going to Odell Beckham Jr.
Right.
this season.
Yeah, and with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I mean,
yeah,
that's just more mouths to feed.
Yep.
And it's a good problem to have if you're the Browns. It's a bad problem if you're Odell Beckham. So we'll see what happens with him. But that'll do it for this episode. This has been week 14? I think we're at right now.
Yeah, week 14.
So we're moving right along. We've been going through, this whole COVID crisis with basically no sports. And so think of how much fun we're going to have when there's actually real sports to talk about. It's going to be fun. For Jose Ortiz, I'm Lou Ruggieri, and this has been the Benchwarmerz podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.